G'day folks, welcome back to the channel. Before I start this discussion, I want to preface it with a disclaimer that this is merely an observation of a situation that I've seen has only been increasing in recent months and years, and I wanted to perhaps give my my thoughts on it, I guess. It could be a very emotive and decisive sort of topic, so I want to sort of give it justice without sounding like I'm complaining or preaching. So recently I was doing some scouting for new campsites around my local area, and I dropped a few pins on Google Maps of places that I wanted to go and visit to sort of scout out whether they'd be appropriate campsites. I noticed recently there's a lot of bushland reserves around the area, which is just like little patches of bushland that are not private property, that are there obviously for some sort of conservation effect, whether it's for flora or fauna or whatever it is. But I just found out that you can actually disperse camp in these places, and you know, I thought, oh, that'd be fairly unique. There was one particular place that I wanted to camp that was on top of this little sort of pimple of a hill, surrounded by farmland, just a little bit of bush on top, and I thought, oh, that'd be an awesome spot, you know, be a nice views around the area on this little bit of bushland. So I drove up there, and the only flat spot in that area where you could potentially set up a camp, there were people camped there. So I thought, yep, no worries, I'll go and find somewhere else to camp this weekend and I'll check this spot out later. I actually came back a week later, and that same group of people were still camped there. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's a long-term camp. I came back a week later and they were still there. And that got me thinking that they are probably, I hate to use the term squatters, but people living rough, or I guess you could call them homeless. The number plates are actually from Queensland, so it was kind of odd that people, I guess it's not odd, I don't know, I've never been in a homeless situation and had the mindset of, what do you do? And that got me thinking that a lot of the places where you would normally be able to sort of disperse camp in this area, I've seen long-term camps set up, and I guess given the current situation, not just in Australia but across the world with the cost of living, it has forced people to, they can't access housing because they're priced out of the market, to go and seek alternate living arrangements out in the bush. That's the only thing I can think of. So I sort of went and looked up the rules for how long you can actually camp out in the bush, and the only thing I could really find was in state forests you can camp for 28 consecutive nights in one location in state forest. Now I can only assume that bushland reserves may fall into that category, but there's several other categories of land usage types out there, bushland reserves being one, recreational reserves. God, I've even seen, looked up the legislation for disused roads. So, you know, a laneway that's not privately owned, that's been put in and has never actually been turned into a road. What's the legalities of camping there? So anyway, the only thing I could find out was that you can camp for 28 consecutive nights in state forest in the one spot, which means that technically you could pack up your camp for one night, go away, and then come back to the same spot again and camp for another 28 consecutive nights. So essentially you could move for one night a month and occupy a location indefinitely. Now, the only thing I can think of too is that perhaps the authorities that govern these areas may be turning a blind eye to that sort of behaviour, because I can see that it is extremely pervasive, not just around this area, but in the travels that I've done, you know, in the wider region and the state. But I've also noticed that there's a lot more sort of long-term camping or rough living going on in urban areas too. The larger urban centre that I live near, there have been tents popping up basically right in the middle of town. I just saw one not long ago that looked like it had been there for quite some time. The tent itself was very faded, and it had been there for quite some time. It was right smack dab in the middle of the CBD, or just a parkland area that's right adjacent to the CBD. And again, I can only think that given the current crisis with the cost of living and people seeking alternate accommodations, that councils might sort of turn a blind eye to it, just to give people the opportunity to be able to live somewhere and perhaps save money, or they simply just can't find accommodation to live or cannot afford it. And it makes you really sort of think and you know, feel blessed that I have a roof over my head, I've got stable income, and I've got a place for my children to live and to grow up. And seeing the amount of homelessness, which I'm particularly not used to living out in a rural area, you don't sort of see homelessness all that regularly. Only when you go to the larger cities like Melbourne and Sydney do you actually see the evidence of homelessness. So actually seeing it out in rural areas and people using state forests and more particularly camping grounds to occupy long term is quite concerning. Now, I'm no economist or financial professional or whatever, and I don't really understand what inflation is and how it's impacting the cost of living and the homelessness crisis and the lack of affordable accommodation for people. I mean, I've heard you know, talk about immigration into Australia that's outstripping the housing supply, and you know, that's creating more competition for housing and driving rents up. And you know, obviously mortgages are quite expensive now, given the interest rates have climbed exponentially in the last 18 months or so. And you know, that's also creating a crunch for people that can't afford mortgages, and then they're having to sell and resort to the rental market, which creates even more competition. And it's simply just pricing people out of the market, and they've got no other option but to go and live rough in the bush, in parks, in any sort of situation. And it's really distressing to see. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining or preaching or anything like that, you know, trying to find places to camp, but it just makes me, I guess, perhaps empathise with people that have to live rough. I mean, people like myself actually enjoy camping, but I don't know how I would react if I actually had to camp long term because of a dire financial situation or just lack of housing. So I guess it begs the question, well, how do we actually fix that situation? I mean, I guess the only thing is to build more houses, to create less competition for housing, so that people can have affordable rents or affordable mortgages. I mean, obviously mortgages are reliant on interest rates as well, which, you know, causes an affordability issue for people accessing housing. But yeah, if we're going to up our immigration intake, well, we need to simply build more houses so that people coming into the country have got places to live, plus the people who are already here also have an opportunity for a place to live. And I think what gives homelessness a bad name is its connection with drug use and crime. I mean, people are probably resorting to crime to perhaps hopefully make some money so that they can create an existence for themselves. And I mean, I don't know what I would do in that situation, but if you become desperate, you know, people will do anything to survive, and it's really sad. But all I can think of is yeah, the councils or the managers of the land would probably just have to turn a blind eye. Obviously, they want to keep those areas clean. So if I was going to live rough, I'd try and you know, keep my campsite as tidy as I could and out of the way, and as out of sight, out of mind is probably the only thing. But again, like I said before, I don't want to preach to people. I just want to highlight the situation and sort of create a discussion on how we can help improve the situation for a lot of people, especially, you know, at this time where so many people are having to live rough because they can't afford housing. So what do we do? You know, it's a very, very emotive topic. So I mean, it's something that councils and state governments and federal governments have to come together and manage sort of in a united way, so that we can help people overcome the housing crisis and be able to get back into established housing and not have to live rough. It's very sad, but unfortunately it's a real sort of fact of life at the moment. And I really feel for the people, and I really would like to help in any way I can and bring light to the situation. So on that note, I'll sign off, guys, and say thanks for watching, and do whatever you can to help out.